Welcome again, everyone, to our weekly webinar. Here we're learning about all the trends, all the ups and downs that our industry is experiencing during the pandemic. And today we have a very exciting panel on how to grow the real estate business, how to expand great big brands in the industry. And Kristian Cole here with us today. She led one of the first expansions initiatives in the industry. So we'll be so eager to learn, Kristan, from you about this experience. Also, Kristan is managing a brokerage and she shares her time between Alaska and Florida. And we will actually start with, as usual, with a quick overview of your markets, Kristan, and then we will dive into your tricks and leadership and how exactly to grow the business in real estate in this current challenging environment. So Kristan, thank you so much. Why don't you start with telling a little bit about yourself and what you are observing currently in your markets?
Sure. So I actually started in Wasilla, Alaska, back in the 80s. And for 15 years, I was a solo practitioner. And because teams weren't even really common at all then, having an assistant was even unusual. So I started at Remax. I bought my first franchise when I was 22 years old, became a broker owner and ran that franchise. And then I actually bought a second franchise in Girdwood, which is in Alaska also. It's where our ski resort is. And then about 10 years ago, I actually was a little bit bored and I sold both of my franchises and I joined Keller Williams. And since that time at Keller Williams, I took on some additional leadership roles beyond just my real estate business in Wasilla. So in Wasilla at that time, 10 years ago, we were doing about 55 million, about 355 transactions a year. And we had a small team, but it was very efficient. And I wanted to grow our business. However, it was such a small community when only 1,200 sides are being done in a year, and we're representing 355 of them. You can see that there's a point of marginal return on any sort of investment that you would make in marketing. So we expanded into Anchorage. It was a fairly easy expansion because it was the same MLS, same licensing laws, and naturally my lead generation was spilling into Anchorage anyway. And then I actually took a position, hired someone from within to run our organization there. I moved to Arizona, bought a second home in Arizona, became the regional director for the Southwest region here in Arizona. I'm coming to you from Scottsdale today. And, ended up starting to build an expansion team here. Actually bought 2 offices where I'm the operating principal now, and then invested in 2 more here in Arizona. And at the same time, started growing expansion across the country and took a vice president's role with Keller Williams International to lead that launch. And I had committed to 5 years of doing that, which I did. And so now, I'm involved in a lot of, I say this, my money's involved in a lot of things, but I can only really have my focus on one, and that's expansion. And we have about 44 locations across the country that we've expanded into.
Oh, wow. With 44 locations, I'm sure, first of all, you can share a lot about what is the trick to make this massive expansion within the pretty short period of time. But let's start actually what you're seeing currently in the market. Do you feel this migration that we're seeing is a permanent and long-term thing? Do you think there is a possibility of the market crash?
So do I think there's a possibility? Yes, because when you have 50 or 35 million people still out of work and you have GDP going through the floor, is there a possibility of a market crash if the government takes their hand off of the economy? Meaning this, they pumped $3.2 million into the economy during the first few months of COVID. They've extended the unemployment benefits, not at 900 a week, but at 600 a week. If the government stops that, and does not come up with another round of PPP money, yes, I do believe that we could see things change rapidly. We saw what happened in 2008 when the economy nationwide changed rapidly. And I think we have to back up a second here. We have to really look at, right now we have we really have three crises, which were caused by one major crisis. So the COVID crisis, which is international, not just national, was the first crisis. That crisis, then the ripple effect of it was, it then caused an economic crisis with small businesses, which our country is, it's the backbone of our country, depends on. So you see small businesses that were shut down, were not allowed to open, or now that they're allowed to open, can only open for whatever seating they have outside, or et cetera. And then the third crisis is the civil unrest, that I believe all of this together has magnified the civil unrest. So you really have three crises going on at the same time. And then to top it off, we're in the middle of a political election year. So I think all of that make foreseeing and giving a definite answer of what's going to happen in the future unknown and uncertain. Now, there's a couple good things about uncertainty. Uncertainty, number one, creates opportunity for those people who are willing to be creative, stay focused, and stay in the game. Uncertainty will cause a lot of people to paralyze. So, you know, I think change and uncertainty is inevitable, but our whether or not we participate, it's optional. So I think if, you know, and we can't know what is not known. Have we ever been in a situation like this before with an international crisis? No. We ever had to shut the country down before? Not like this. So I think a lot will unfold after the election, because clearly there's two different viewpoints on how the pandemic and the crisis should be handled. So I think that a lot is dependent upon that. And then secondly, that what will get us to at least that point is we're going to have to see another round of PPP money, because otherwise you're going to see a lot of businesses just going, I'm not even going to try to reopen again. That in itself has additional ripple effect. And that is that you'll see retail space, office space, probably lots of properties like that go, you know, with huge vacancies, which then put pressure on the landlord. And so I don't want to foresee I don't want to pretend like I can foresee too much. But what I do know is if there's a lack of economic stimulus, another round of economic stimulus, we can't keep doing $3.2 million forever. But if there's not some additional help, you're going to see more businesses fail. That I know. And when more businesses fail, more people are unemployed. Unemployed people don't buy houses. So do I think there's a potential of a disaster coming? Yes, but also it depends on what our elected officials do right now. So what I do know, on the other hand, is that we have what's called, I would call it the lost decade where we didn't have 1 million houses a year being built. And that 2008 to 2018, that did not happen. We had maybe 650,000 houses being built. So we have a shortage of housing anyway. You add to it the pent up demand because when we were sheltering in place, and also sellers, you know, not wanting people to go through their homes, which I completely understand. It caused a pent up demand. Now you have interest rates at 50-year lows. So interest rates at 50-year lows, we have a pent up demand, and we have the lost decade of about 5 million houses that weren't built that should have been built. So when you just look at from that perspective, you can see great hope in the future. However, there's the other three crises that not knowing what our elected officials are going to do or not do, it puts a lot of doubt and uncertainty to know exactly where this is headed. So what I tell my people is, we do know what's happening today. I can see today. And right now, today, we need to get out there and work and do the very best we can to take territory right now, when some people are sitting at home on the couch paralyzed. That I do know. And so we've continued to do that. And the people that have stayed in the game, what we have seen is that they absolutely are crushing it, because not only because there's a listing shortage, but also because about 30% of the realtors are not engaged right now. So you add all that together, the ones that want to work are crushing it. So in all the locations across the country that I'm in, there's a shortage of listings. There's multiple offers. There's properties going for 40,000 overpriced, 100,000 overpriced. I talked to a gentleman last Friday, and he said that Most homes that he is putting on the market that are over 400 and 500,000 are going for 100,000 overpriced. So if our 44
like
locations,
20%, right?
what's that?
Is it the 20% over $500,000? You had $100,000. So in some cases, it gets like almost 20% premium.
Right. And when
That's
the other day in my office here in Scottsdale, we had like 27 offers on one house within 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
So, so for right now, and I think that's what people have to focus on. The only certain thing is uncertainty in the next few months. So we need to focus on what we can control. And we can control a lot of things like our attitude, getting up, going to work, doing things like that. There's some things we can't control and we have to pivot daily.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kristan. And during the pandemic and the shelter in place, the first couple of months of pandemic, we all were anticipating the real estate industry to halt. However, thanks to technology, innovation, the willingness, the brokerage owners to pivot, the willingness of associations to introduce very quickly new forms, new policies, enabled the real estate industry to move on. And actually nobody expected that the market will be so aggressive these days. Yes, we have some markets like San Francisco and New York where there are tons of listings available, and we don't have as much demand from buyers' side. But at the same time, Kristan, as you just mentioned, there is a shortage of housing. For some reason, buyers are very active. They want to move to a better home where they can make Zoom calls, where they can have separate rooms with their children because they need to make distance education.
Right.
So we're seeing a lot of activities because of this new lifestyle we just entered. At the same time, we're expecting the mortgage holiday to soon be ended. So I think that will be the first kind of test of the market. And once the foreclosures start come, then this is the period where it could potentially shake the industry. Do you agree?
I think there's one other thing happening that we haven't talked about, and that is that you're seeing a lot of exodus out of the big major cities into the suburbs. That's happening in New York City right now. I coach a team in Tenafly, New Jersey, and the people are leaving the city and wanting to come to the suburbs. So it's also putting additional pressure on listing inventory in the suburbs outside of those big cities.
That's a great point. Willie, you're from this region.
Yes.
Yeah, what you can share, and do you feel like agents, let's say from the city, from New York, are trying to now serve the customers in suburbs?
Yeah, so it's funny. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, about an hour outside of New York. Currently, I've lived in Manhattan the last 8 years, but I'm now sheltering in place up in Vermont. But I mean, with my demographic, 35 years old, and I have lots of friends that are married, children, and tons of them are not only leaving the city temporarily, but they left initially on a temporary basis, and then you kind of gives you for lack of a better word, a way to test drive the suburban lifestyle, and you sort of realize all of the advantages of it. So I've had more conversations in the last couple of weeks with people that are like, initially weren't planning on it, but we're looking for a house now. And it's interesting because I have a lot of friends that are brokers and agents out in Greenwich, which, was a very hot market 10 years ago and has cooled off a lot. And all of a sudden there was a ton of inventory sitting, and now all of a sudden it's red hot again. And it's exactly because of that trend that you were just speaking of, where people now that were commuting into the city or living in the city can now do it remotely, so they want to get out. I was talking to a friend who works at a hedge fund, and her boss, who runs it, bought a house out in Darien, sight unseen, and is moving his entire family out of there, 3 kids and wife. And they've lived in the city their entire life. So certainly seeing that trend, and brokers and agents in the city that I speak to, there's some opportunistic stuff going on, but certainly nowhere near what you see going on in the suburbs as people leave and wait for the dust to settle in New York and kind of make sense of it from there.
And Kristen, do you feel like you need to retrain some of your agents in those locations? Some of them has suddenly have more business than ever, and others that really struggle to find buyers.
You know, no one is struggling in our organization to find buyers right now. Quite the opposite. And I would just say that because, you know, I think it's important anytime you go through a crisis that if you're going to pattern your leadership and lead your organization through it, then you need to pattern after a proven leader, meaning somebody's gone through a crisis before and come out the other side on the positive side. And I think that sometimes we look up and we see something, you know, something that someone's doing, some shiny object, and we follow someone that's not proven. And that to me is, you know, it's a recipe for disaster. You know, that's just an experiment. So having gone through 4 major downturns in my real estate career, I mean, downturns such that from 1 year I sold a house for $250,000, and 3 years later sold it for Fannie Mae as the seller for 25 grand. That's a downturn.
Wow,
you know, and
yeah.
I've gone through 4 of those, and there's some things that even though the cause of the crisis may be different, what plays out after the fact really doesn't change much. And, you know, you need to get into reality quickly. So for me, getting my people into reality quickly, you know, facing the uncertainty and the unknown, helping them with their mental health. You know, usually, you know, I was listening to a psychologist the other day, and typically in America, 2 in 5 people have a mental health event in 1 year. Right now, they're saying 1 in 2. So helping them with their mental health, helping them with the uncertainty, and learning how to cope with what they, and the biggest piece in helping our people has been helping them cope with and focus on what they can control versus what they can't control. And so when you focus on what you can control, it makes you feel better, because it's kind of funny. It makes you feel a little more in control when you're focused on things you can control. So we really don't have anyone sitting on the fence. They've all stayed highly engaged. Although I do know that there's a large portion of the agent population who we just had to look. You talk about technology. That's where our pivot came. We didn't quit working. We just had to pivot and do it through technology and deliver it the way that the client wants it delivered. So if the client wants it delivered via technology, they want to see a house via Zoom. They want to have a buyer's presentation via Zoom or a listing presentation. Then our pivot is we have to learn how to deliver the content that the sellers want when they want it. And most of them want it right here on their phone, and they want to be able to do everything from there. And so our biggest pivot, if you will, was what would have taken, I think, probably 5 years for our entire organization to have adoption, really took 5 months. So the technology that we probably should have been using all along, we were forced. Everyone was forced, or get out of the game. So I think it has put a lot of pressure on the agent population to really embrace technology at a much higher level than they have before.
And before the pandemic, I had the feeling that agents are the ones that are controlling the transaction, the home buying process. So they need to introduce the technology to their customers, buyers and sellers. And now what you're saying is that, well, actually now the consumer is in the control because of the COVID. How do you think we will move forward in the next 5 to 10 years? Will the consumer still have the control? Or once we get to the normal, the agent will say, well, it's fine if I will just send you documents this way. What do you feel about the consumer role in the automation?
I think we would all like to say that there's going to be a new normal by which we're all going to operate. But what I can tell you is I don't think that's true at all. First of all, I don't think we're going back to the way that it was. But I think what we're going to be talking about is a new now, meaning it might be weekly, monthly, yearly, every 6 months. I don't know, but I don't think there's going to be a new normal by which we operate on a consistent basis for a period of time. I think it's going to be a new now. So I believe we have to get used to uncertainty. We have to get used to pivoting daily. And I do think the customer is still going to be in control, because at the end of the day, our value that we bring to the client is absolutely our expertise and knowledge in the marketplace, but we can deliver what it is that they need or want via technology. So I think what we have to get really good at is how do we deliver not only the helping them make home buying decisions, buying or purchasing through technology, but also the entire process, meaning the transaction process, the system involved in the transaction, which absolutely can be done with technology as well. So I think we have to get used to, who would have thought, earlier today, I was, Denny Grimes and I had 500 people on a Zoom call of us teaching them how to go find more sellers right now.
Oh.
So we wouldn't have been on a 500 agent Zoom call 6 months ago. There's no way. So, it has changed the world, and it will continue to change the world. I think what we have to get used to is change. Change is going to be the constant. And so I think daily, weekly, monthly is going to be a new normals, or I'm sorry, not a new normal, but a new now. Would I like everything to settle down and we do things a certain way and have it be certain? Yes. However, that's just not our
happening.
world.
It's not happening. We just need to adjust. And I totally agree with you, Kristan. And we're very passionate here at Propy on automation of the transaction. This is our passion. We strongly believe that home buying process, the closing process can finally become enjoyable. And I think home buyers in America and globally, they deserved, when they buy one of the most valuable assets in their life, they deserve this process to be really smooth, secure, transparent, and predictable.
Right.
Yes, we have a great touch with the realtor. Very often it's very enjoyable process. It's almost like it's a new friend in your life. But then when it comes to the closing process, it's still a nightmare. It's 30 days of anxiety for every consumer. So this is where we're very passionate, and this new norm really forces the consumers, the buyers and the sellers to start using the technology. So it's,
right. So, 6 months ago, super majority of people went to a title company to close the transaction or to an attorney's office. And today we've had to pivot and figure out how do we deliver securely that same information, allow people to close without and still allow social distancing. And we're pivoting all the time. I believe that there will come a time in the very short future that the new now will be that no one goes to the title company to close. No one goes to the attorney's office. They do it. Very few people, even if they have the choice, I think very few people, because we've just learned we can be a lot more efficient with technology.
Yeah.
And effective.
You can save time. You can save hours and days of like commuting to the title office, to the brokerage office and so on. And also once you have it all online, remotely closed, you have it saved on your phone, as you just showed, or on your PC. And you also, so one example here, an interesting one is, we talked to a number of companies that do online notarization, remote online notarization. And some of them are experiencing high growth. This means that title agents and brokers, they learn to close the deal entirely online with a web camera. However, I've talked to another provider and they saw decline of transactions via remote online notarization once the market started to reopen. And it's surprising to me because the consumer is saving the time. However, probably the title agents are not liking the interface of this technology, or they feel like for them it's more efficient to have people to come to their office because they don't lose the time, right? They just sit in their office and then the consumers are entering. So that was a very interesting example where we're going back again to the old way of transacting.
It's interesting. I think the consumers will dictate that. I think that now that they have that taste in their mouth that they really don't have to go down there, they'll pick a title company that will do it the way they want it done. So if the title company is refusing, they'll know in advance before they write their contract. They'll ask their agent. They should ask their agent, which title companies are allowing to close the transaction without formally coming into the office, and choose them. So there'll be winners and losers for sure.
Yeah, and definitely, I think it's agents' work to also to vet or re-vet their providers, such as lenders, title companies, escrow companies, closing attorneys. What do they use now? Do they stick to this innovation path, or are they going back? Because in the end of the day, the consumer is doing this transaction only once or twice in their life, and thus they entirely rely on the agent recommendation, what to use, how to sign, and so on. So the power, yeah.
It's fascinating because, pardon me, I was in Israel in March, and I was actually out in the Sea of Galilee. This is no joke. And I actually closed on a house on my phone. In the middle of Israel in the Sea of Galilee, I bought a house. So, you know, it can be done. And once it's been done, then why do you want to go back to having to go to, you know, a physical place and waste all that time? Most people don't.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And congrats on the deal. This is the enjoyable process I'm talking about, right?
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
It feels good.
Yeah. So having the closing process on your phone, it was simple, easy. And so I think, you know, it causes me to start thinking about the question, how, not can we, but how can we deliver what the customer wants on their phone? And so, and provide a seamless, smooth process that is enjoyable.
Kristan, how do you evaluate that? So obviously when you're implementing technology for your agents, it's easier to get feedback and you know, you're in their shoes and understand. But when you're dealing with clients and trying to figure out what are they going to use, what's going to make the experience better, how do you get that feedback and how do you make those decisions?
You know, I think it started, you know, because in the beginning, even it being in 44 locations, you have to remember not everybody was experiencing COVID at the same I guess you would say at the same level. And so I was having to make decisions about 44 different locations based on the information I had that day. So the best way for, and so of course I talked with the agents, but the other thing is when we started making those I care calls to our client base and asking them, what can we do to help? How would you like us to deliver that to you? Whatever it was, whether it be, you know, showing them a property or getting them groceries. When you get super close to the customer and you keep hearing the same things over and over, what I figured out is there's probably 3 different groups, I would say, that people's, how they want things delivered to them during this time has been. And it's our job to be in curiosity and come from curiosity when we meet with the client to find out what they want, just like we would want to find out what ultimately is their goal in buying and selling a home. So I think us making sure that we're asking those questions up front to the client, which we did a lot of when we were sheltering in place, and you know, we were continuing to make phone calls, but the phone calls didn't stop. The technology to reach out to our clients and customers didn't stop. What changed was the message and the mode of which the message was delivered. So the path is still the path, the plan still the plan. It's just the message and the mode of delivery are different, and we have to be nimble enough to pivot to the way our customer wants it done. So I think you ask enough and you'll find out. So that's what we did. We just asked them, how would you like to go through this process? And we delivered it the way they wanted it delivered.
Sure. I mean, so we go through a similar thing at Propy, you know, every week we meet with the product team and myself and all the other sales reps, we give feedback. What are you hearing? What do clients want? What functionality do you know, keep coming up? Do you have a formal process for that where agents either submit a form or you have a weekly call, or how do you kind of keep track of that? And with so many different locations as well, I can imagine that's challenging.
So I do a call with everyone all together every Friday. But then our other leaders actually do one-on-ones with them throughout the week. And so some of the information is coming to me direct when I am on the national call with them on Fridays. And some of it's coming to me through their leadership, you know, over a particular region. And so I'll give you another example is that, you know, we could not gain high adoption with our feedback from the agents in terms of what their, you know, some people say their accountability, you know, what were their numbers for the day? And what we found is that if we put it on an app that they could download to their phone, the adoption was off the chart, remarkably better. And so we borrowed someone's app at the beginning just to see what the adoption would look like. And then once we knew that we could get adoption with that, we couldn't get, it's kind of funny. They didn't want to have to just go in and fill out a form on their computer. What they wanted to do is get a text message that said, hey, time to put in your numbers, and click on the app and in 20 seconds put their numbers in. So we, just like we would do for buyers and sellers, we created an app for that one thing, which is the accountability. So it has their goals in there, and they can see everybody else in the organization. So, you know, there's points for things. So we make it competitive and fun as well. But that's an example of something that came out of kind of those small roundtables. Was they wanted an app. They wanted to be able to do it on their phone.
And that's amazing how you actually first tested it. It's a very Silicon Valley approach, like agile approach to build, and built on your thesis to get enough data to actually build it. So you don't invest, you first test an idea with someone's app, and then you made this adoption. That's really great. And you said that you have some gamification there as well, right?
I'm sorry?
And you also added some gamification points, incentives for the folks to have fun there.
We did. And the other thing that we did is we created a rewards app, which allows us to, you know, I think get a higher level of referrals from our client base, because 65% of the population love, you know, coupons and points and things like that. So we created the app, but when we created it for 4 different groups of people. We created it for our own agents inside of our organization where they could get points for doing things. We created it for buyers and sellers. We created it for leaders in other market centers who might want to refer people to our organization in terms of agents that might want to work with us. And then leadership, people that are in leadership. And so when we created it, we were specific about making sure that, well, everybody kind of likes rewards. So why don't we reward people in addition to the monetary reward them with points that they can go buy things that they want to buy. So during COVID, we really created 2 different things, our rewards app and our accountability app. We don't call it an accountability app, but that's what it really is. And what we also discovered is if they had to log into their computer and do any of it, it wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. We had to get a native app for it and get it right on their phone.
And how about the consumer app? Have they interacted with it?
The consumer app, what?
The buyers and the seller, do they interact with the consumer app?
Oh yeah, they do. It's fascinating, honestly. You know, it's kind of like anything. You have to bring up the awareness of what it is. So first thing we had to do is in every single piece of correspondence with our database, we put on their information about our rewards app. Once you bring up the awareness, once people start trying it, then you gain some adoption. And, you know, once you get to about 20% adoption, then the adoption after that goes fairly quickly. The first 10% is the hardest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. Okay, well, let's get to the, yeah. Do you want anything to?
Just the other day, we got a referral from someone across the country that was referring an agent to us, meaning referring an agent to join our organization. So the great thing is, you know, it's that one place that you can go in and you can refer a seller, a buyer, an agent, a leader. I mean, I think it's a pretty fascinating idea. And I love it when people can cash in on the rewards.
That sounds great. And it actually helps again with your main mission and your main passion expansion, because this is where an easy app allows people to refer you agents, more business leaders, right, as you just said. So can you share a little bit about your passion and expansion? How you got there, and what are your main strengths in being successful in expansion?
Expansion is simple, but it's not easy. Really, you know, real estate's simple. but it's not easy. So what I would say is that the number one thing that had to happen in order for me to be able to create a large organization and expansion is that I really had to become a better leader. When you're showing up every day in one location, there's a lot of what you do that you don't even realize that you're doing because you're showing up every day. So when you're not showing up every day, it becomes super important that your systems are in writing. And so the one thing that we did that I think makes us successful in our locations is we created a playbook around everything. Anything that we do, we create a playbook around it. Just like, for instance, open houses. Well, when COVID started happening, we revamped our open house playbook and came out with, a technology version of it, if you will. And so creating the playbooks, becoming a better leader, working on myself harder than I worked on anyone else. And as you become a better leader, you're going to attract better leaders. So the more it's interesting. It's like anything, adoption to technology, or really anything. It's the inertia of getting off the ground is the hardest. But once you've gained some traction, once you've attracted additional talent, it's almost like you don't have to go looking for it anymore. You don't have to go find it. It's kind of like, would you rather run towards people, or would you rather have people running towards you, or do you want to have to run to them? And I think initially, no matter what you're doing, you're the one having to do the running towards them. But the more successful you become and the better leader you become, it naturally attracts talent. And I think the third piece is, do you have a compelling mission, if you will? Do you have a compelling mission, a worthy mission? Because people like to be part of something bigger than themselves.
Kristan, I remember when we had our initial prep call, you spoke about you had to take some time away from your brokerage in Alaska, and you were shocked at how seamlessly it was running without you. What do you think the key to that was? I know we talked a little bit about, some of the stuff you just mentioned, leadership, team building, but what was the key to that? And, I'm sure you took that away, and that was an important lesson that really helped you to drive expansion for Keller Williams and all the other businesses you've been involved in.
Yeah. That was 9 years ago, and the gal that took my place has succeeded. Well, let me back up. The first person I hired to take over and lead the Alaska team, a year into it, said, I'm out. And the reason he was out is because he had decided he was going to go compete against us. And my big aha from that is that I had brought him into the organization from another state, from Washington. The second time around, my aha was I needed someone from inside the company to rise up. And interestingly enough, during that year or two that he was there, it allowed this other person who now runs the organization, it allowed her to mature. And because she started at as a showing assistant, then became a buyer's agent, then a lead buyer's agent, then the listing specialist. And so the last few pieces of that allowed her to mature a little more and to be ready to take that on. And so I think the lesson I learned is you're always better to hire from within than to hire from outside the organization, because when you hire from within, you have people that are already have bought into the culture and bought into the vision. And the vision needs to be bigger than the leader. It needs to, so that the vision lives on beyond the leader. And so I think when you can hire from within, that's always a better choice. When you're smaller, oftentimes that's not possible. But in this particular case, that was the difference between succeeding and not succeeding, was hiring from within.
And how is that transitioned to the Keller Williams expansion and driving that? Obviously, you're going to have to bring in new people. You can't always bring from within. So how do you sort of balance that? And, like you said, the importance of building a culture. How do you evaluate people to make sure they fit into that culture?
So I teach a lot across the country, and instead of physically going there now, I'm going there via technology. And, you know, when I teach something over a period of a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 hours per day over a couple of days, one thing will happen. People that believe what you believe and understand that you have a just cause that you are championing, they will move toward you. And so that's, I think, really the key to recruiting is being out there and being front and center in front of the public. And so in order to do that, you've got to come up with the messaging that people need and want. So for instance, earlier today, the message and the delivery of it is very different than what it would have been 6 months ago. So it always requires you to get out front and think about what the ripple effects of this will be. How can you get in front of it? So in order to attract talent to the organization, you know, people say to me, well, why aren't you in this city, or why aren't you in that city? And the truth is because the right leader hasn't shown up yet. Without a good leader in a location, it's very difficult for someone without leadership to succeed consistently. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So for me, the best way to attract talent to the expansion world is to teach classes across the country. And they're the classes that most people who are growing teams or have small teams would be attracted to, because a lot of small teams are joining us because we can reduce their expenses. We can take some of the 80% stuff that really they shouldn't be focusing on. We can take it off their plate through our centralized system, take care of it for them, and allow them to go out and do the one thing that they really want to do, which is helping buyers and sellers. So that's really the key. And because when you're teaching and you weave in stories from your organization, it allows them to see who you are, what you believe, what your values are, and do you have something, a just cause that the organization is championing beyond just selling homes.
And Kristan, how do you incorporate innovation and technology into your mission and vision when you're attracting all those fantastic leaders across country?
Well, today it's a lot easier because people realize that technology, you know, when the country got shut down and you know, there's no, I think you know, that things like this could happen again. Of course they could. And so I think it woke everyone up that the people that were lagging behind and maybe fighting technology, that they needed to embrace it. So now we don't have to go sell them on adopting it. They know that they need to be really good at it if they want to differentiate themselves from someone else. So for instance, one of the next things that we're going to do, which we've never done before, is have a buyer seminar and a seller seminar, but across the country at the same time. So have like 6 experts from 6 of our different locations on camera at the same time doing, you know, home buyer seminar or sellers or an investment seminar. Because if you think about it, a lot of people they're not aware of the process. And again, people want to feel in control. So that if you can give them more information and make them aware and have a greater understanding of what the process is in the home buying and selling system, then they're more likely to take action. People don't take action when they're afraid or there's uncertainty. So the more information you can give them, the more comfortable they feel about moving forward. So moving forward, I see technology being a big piece. And you know, when I say technology, sometimes it just means having a system that's reliable, that is quick, easy in terms of the listing process or the closing process or the, you know, transaction from pending to closing process. So there's a lot of ways to use technology. It's interesting because if you thought about this, and it makes me think about it, I traveled over 250,000 miles last year, actual air miles. And this year, obviously, a lot less. And so now I feel like I've gotten so much time back because I'm not in airports, I'm not traveling, I'm not packing and unpacking. And instead, I can deliver the same content with our team in place that we did today to 500 people. So what would I rather do? Talk to 25 people in a classroom in another state, or stay at my own home and talk to 500 people and deliver the content in such an excellent way that they feel like they got that their time was valued and their money was valued.
Yeah,
So that,
totally agree.
that,
You
that's
have the energy, you have the time to prepare, and definitely it's technology that enables more people to join and to learn from all your background and experience. And also you invested heavily in the foundation of yourself as a leader, as I'm hearing, and you're transitioning the information towards the leaders, not only about how to make a team greater, more efficient, but also the mental health, which is super important. So we'll be wrapping up, and I would love to ask you two questions, very quick ones. What are the books that you would recommend to leaders, to team leaders, to brokers, so that they can be more efficient, more prepared to adapt, to change?
Well, I did not know you're going to ask me that, but
You're prepared. Awesome.
It's called The Leader's Greatest Return. So if somebody wants to learn how to be a better leader, this book by John Maxwell is amazing. I've read it already. I'm listening to it for a second time, but this is a great book about how to lead. So if you want to learn to be a better leader, this one would be it. If you want to learn how to, through your organization, find out what people, what's really important to people, and how can you come up with a mission and a vision that goes after what I would call a just cause. Some people would call it a big why. Then read the book by Simon Sinek, Infinite Games, because that's a great book about what the difference is between the who you want to become, the why you want to become it, and a just cause that's bigger than and will live on beyond just your life. And so I think that that's important, because what I know, because I have 5 kids, and several of them millennials, is that they want to be part of a just cause. They want to be part of making this world better, whatever their better looks like. And if you can't provide a vision for them to be able to be part of that, and also at the same time grow what's important to them inside of your world, meaning if you can't make your world big enough that they can see themselves working with and through you and succeeding with what's important to them, then that's going to be a problem. So those 2 books I think will take you a long way. And then the final book would be The One Thing by Gary Keller, because that's the focusing book. You can read all you want, but unless you can focus and actually then execute, it's not going to happen. So those would be my 3 books for finding your just cause, really helping you become an excellent leader. And then the third thing would be the focusing question, to be able to focus and control what you can control during a very uncertain world.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Everyone here, attendees, and also on live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, if you have questions for Kristan, please don't hesitate. Post your questions here in the chat or on social media, so that we ask Kristan before we go. And then another short question, Kristan: which leaders in tech or real estate industry do you follow?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Which leaders, thought leaders in technology or real estate or mental health you follow and you would recommend to follow?
Yeah, great question. Number one, I would definitely follow Ben Kenny. He's out of a small little town in Washington, but he has built a technology platform for database management and transactions.
Braverly, right?
It's Brivity. Yeah,
Brivity. Sorry. Yeah.
Ben has a podcast. It's called Win, Make, Give. And I would definitely listen to that podcast, because he talks about so many things. He talks about the mindset around wealth, the mindset around, change, the mindset around creating technology. And so Ben Kenny is definitely someone I would follow. And Win, Make, Give that podcast is probably one of the very best places to listen to him. So he's definitely someone in technology that I follow. And in the technology, I'm just trying to think through the real estate world in terms of technology, you know, it's funny is I go find what somebody else has done and they've done it well, and I just copy them. So whatever it is I'm trying to find at the moment, I'll do the research and dig and go, oh, that person's the genius on this. When I had to put a home studio in the house in Alaska, the house here in Arizona, and one in Florida, I went to somebody who'd already created it and just said, help me. So just, I would say that there's always going to be an expert. And the people that you allow to speak into your world and into your life, I think are, you know, you are the average of the top 5 people that you hang around. So if you're not succeeding at the level that you want, you might want to go get some new friends, I guess. And I don't mean that literally, but I do mean I need a coach for everything, you know, whether it's for leadership, if it's for business, if it's for, you know, my physical health. You know, we need coaches. All of us need coaches. And I think most people just think of it in terms of the business world, but it applies to really everything. Your spiritual life, you know, everyone needs a coach. So I've gone out and found what I think are the best people for me, you know, for my journey, for where I'm at in my journey, to help me move forward. And I pay attention to what they say, and Ben Kenny calls it my R&D department, rip off and duplicate. I get pretty good at that. I don't mean copyright, but I just mean conceptually.
Yeah, it's a good one. And you're totally right. Coaches and mentors are so critical. They're becoming more and more critical in our life. And many people are still resistant to that because they think that they need to really like choose this person and they stick to this person for a long time. But actually the secret here is just whatever need you have now to really excel in something. It could be short term, 1 month, 3 months, 4 months. Like with shelter in place, we needed to really address our mental health. So yes, you find a mentor just for a couple of sessions, and it can absolutely transform your life. In our case, and in Propy, whenever we transition from one stage of the development to another, before we hire people, we actually look for consultants that are the best in this particular space. We have 1, 2, 3 calls from mentors, and then understanding this process better, we hire the talent. So I think it's really critical for anyone who is growing personally or who is growing their business. It's really very, very helpful. And Kristan, we have a question here. Do you think augmented reality will grow in real estate? The question is from Said Corby.
And say the question one more time.
Do you think augmented reality, AR, will grow in real estate? Obviously, virtual reality is already part of the real estate industry. The majority of listings have virtual tours, but I think Said is asking about augmented reality. So I'm not sure like to what extent. Do you have any opinion?
I think, well, you know, we've also watched AI grow inside of the real estate industry. I mean, right now, if you went to our website, immediately a chat box would come up, but you would be connected with a live person. I think that's the difference between the way it was done before with the bot, and now, you know, you've got a live person. So I think it's continuing to unfold. I think that there are people that are super creative right now that are figuring out things that typically they wouldn't have been their focus at the time. But now, because our world has changed, it's changed forever. We don't know what it was going to look like tomorrow, but we know today. And there are a lot of creative people. Americans are very creative, and they're coming up with new things. And if I were sitting out there and I didn't want to grow a big organization, but I wanted to be able to tap into resources, I would tap into, for instance, companies like yours, where I could get the resources I need without having to hire the talent and maintain the talent and grow the talent and have, you know, a lot of overhead. I would tap into systems and people who've already created the systems. Because when you go creating it yourself, it's not for the faint of heart. So yeah. I think that there's, you know, depending on where you are at in your business journey, there's a solution for you. And I think that's what we're good at coming up with. And I don't know about AR. I'm just saying, you know, I've just seen what AI has been doing. And I think that has gone from, you know, the chat boxes are now pretty normal on any website, whether it's a clothing store or real estate office. But what is unusual is now they've found a way to immediately get you to a live person. And for me, in 44 locations, I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Propy, we're incorporating blockchain technology, which is very novel. We're also using AI to evaluate which transaction documents are legit,
Yes.
and matching the list of the document with the checklist automatically, setting
Right.
time of transaction coordinators. AR
Right.
could be also beneficial, where we had this feature early on where you can drive around the town, and when you look at the camera, you actually see all the houses that are on sale with prices on top of the houses. So this is where we have some pieces of virtual reality to the real world applied. So all those items are very exciting. And Kristan, thank you so much for your time today, for all your tips and recommendations. We'll share the list of those books to the audience on social media. It's amazing how you build the foundation of yourself, of your leaders and your organization. We definitely will continue to follow you, and we're wishing you best of luck in all the endeavors.
Well, it was my pleasure, my honor. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kristin.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.